Alright, so if all goes right, I'm gonna have 6 10 years later videos for the month of November, and also one for the month of December, but I'm gonna try to lump that in with the November ones just because I don't want it to get in the way of year-end list season or anything like that. So I'm gonna try to have these videos out as soon as possible, and also, if at any point over the next 3 videos it sounds like I'm just trying to get through this fast or anything like that, it's just really cold in my bedroom. That's why I'm wearing a hoodie for the first time in any of these videos. During the winter months, my room is notoriously the coldest one in the house, and I'm feeling that now. If I don't end up doing this video in a hoodie, I'm probably going to die of hypothermia on camera. So, because I don't want to be stuck in a cold room, let's just jump right into these videos. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And as you could tell from the title, the album that we'll be talking about today is the 2011 Mac Miller album, Blue Slide Park. This was the debut album from the late Pittsburgh rapper Mac Miller, who in the early 2010s was already getting his name buzzing before the release of this album. He released a pair of breakthrough viral mixtapes in K.I.D.S and Best Day Ever, the former of which was reissued last year on streaming services for its 10th year anniversary, which I somehow missed out on, and I regret that because I would have loved to cover it in a video. This album became a pretty big deal when it topped the Billboard 200, thus becoming the first independently distributed album to top the chart since 1995 when the Dog Pound released Dog Food. The album was most certainly not without its detractors though. Chief among them was Pitchfork, who notably gave this album a 1 out of 10. That gave me reason to pause when approaching this album. Yes, it's just one opinion and everyone is entitled to their own opinion on music, but a 1 out of 10 often indicates to me that an album is a special kind of bad. And that made me wonder if there would be anything here that would indicate that. While I'm not the closest follower of Mac's music, I, like many others, really loved his final 2 albums, Swimming in Circles, and I was very interested in going back to this record to see where it all began, to get an idea of how Mac evolved as he reached his final projects. This one was 16 tracks and 46 minutes, which is a rather short length for an album of that many tracks. I didn't really worry about the songs being under-fulfilling though, and none of them really are. Even a number of the ones that lean close to the 2 and 2.5 minute marks have enough content packed in them to feel fulfilling. And more encouragingly, I found quite a bit to like about this album. Even if it isn't always as consistent as it should be, it does a very good amount, especially for an independently distributed debut album. The title track, Blue Slide Park, was one of the earliest showcases of Mac's potential. He gets a boom bap beat to rap over, basically giving us a look at who he is. His flows are extremely fast and exciting, and it really showed the type of excitement he was able to bring as a performer. It keeps things light, but still fantastic. Same goes for Under the Weather. This is a song that keeps things light and fun with a bevy of different instruments. It's a track that Mac noted he and his creators made after spending $15,000 on instruments at Guitar Center. In a way, there are elements of the song that almost sound predictive of some of the more artful types of songs Mac would make on some of his final records. It's a chill, mellow banger that's just too fun to ignore. Of the Soul also stays in the vibey style as Mac pays his respects to De La Soul, and that frat boy personality does shine through in quite a few of his bars. Fortunately, the song maintains my attention thanks to Mac's flows, that wavy-ass beat lined with the beautiful pianos, and the many cool transitions and mood changes throughout. Party on Fifth Avenue is a track built on a prominent sample of the 900 number by DJ Mark, the 45 King. It's kind of a weird song to listen back to now. As someone who got into Mac with recent records like Swimming in Circles, it feels weird to jump back into his frat rap origins. Lyrically, the song is not unlikable, which I'm happy for given that I mentioned the frat point. The beat is big and electronic, and I think Mac keeps things fun enough to make this a nice highlight. While those fun, boisterous, and often vibey tracks tend to be what dominates the record, Mac certainly doesn't show fear in moving into other sonic directions and moods. Frick Park Market, for example, is a much more reverb-heavy and dark direction, where Mac jumps into more of a trippy style. The hook is pretty catchy, although it definitely does feel very reminiscent of the hook from Mac's song Donald Trump. Fortunately, he bodies this beat enough to make it a fun little jam. My Team goes even harder into that dark style with an insane amount of bass that could probably cause rumbles in any sound system that plays it. Mac has often been seen as a versatile artist, and I think he showed that here by being able to jump into such a wild beat and still dominate and maintain the front and center presence on the track. Missed Calls also feels like one of the more emotional cuts on the record, with Mac talking about a relationship that didn't work over some of the most delicate instrumentals on the project. I think the pianos and violins mix very well, and Mac's more downcast vocal tone on his verses, combined with the layered vocals on the chorus, add a really great vibe that I really enjoy. The album most certainly isn't perfect, and while I wouldn't dare call it bloated despite having 16 tracks, I do think there are a few unnecessary additions. I'm largely talking about some of the shortcuts that, despite creating a nice vibe, feel too inconsequential to amount to much in the grand scheme of the record. English Lane is a bright, effervescent track simulating what feels like a walk in the park, though it would probably have a greater impact if it was longer than a minute and a half. Same goes with Hole in My Pocket, a forlorn 35-second instrumental track that, while it again adds to the intro's feeling of being in a park, just doesn't add nearly enough to the album to justify its inclusion. It feels like this could have been expanded and turned into its own song. Also, while Mac does show a good diversity in sounds throughout the album, not everyone immediately clicks with me, as it feels like Mac had a good idea of how to exist in different styles and vibes, but didn't always know how to make them hook. PA Nights is a bit more downbeat and slightly introspective compared to some of the earlier tracks with more fast flows from Mac. I do like how ethereal the instrumental can feel, but I'm not totally into how much it blows up on the hook. It's still a decent track, but just not one I'm really grabbed by. Man in the Hat also stands in that really light, plucky sound where Mac paints a conversation between him and an older man in an attempt to explain the new generation. I don't know if the lyricism always stays focused on that idea, but I do think he focuses nicely on the idea of this song feeling like a round of applause, and his rhyme schemes, especially on the second verse, are some of my favorites on the entire album. This is just unfortunately one of those situations where I wish I liked the chorus a lot more than I did, as it just gets a bit repetitive and lasts too long for my liking. Diamonds and Gold takes on a glistening sound that does feel a good deal different from many of the other tracks here. Despite some of the clever elements of the instrumental, this is a cut that I just feel doesn't have much that really hooks me in. I'm not just talking about the chorus either, there's just not much about it that really grabs me, even with Mac doing his thing on the verses. Up All Night, not to be confused with the Drake song, is a straight up party banger with some very bright guitars that gives it a vibe of something like the Ramones. I think Mac has way too much fun on it, which does help add to the vibe of the song being a party, but once again I do wish that I was more into the chorus and especially the pre-chorus. They feel a bit more undercooked, and while I can certainly see how others would enjoy this song, especially with some of the electronic video game-esque production, it's just not one of my favorites on the record. Smile Back moves into the more aggressive sound where Mac really attacks the beat and stands up against his haters. I think he dominates, but I just wish this song also had a better hook than it did. Loitering really leans deeply into the reverb, almost to the point of feeling like noise rap, but with a bit more structure to it. Mac has a few clever pop culture references here and there, but the noisiness of it ends up being a bit too much of an ear sore for me. I don't mind songs this loud, but this one just made my ears hurt a bit even without wearing headphones. Fortunately, I did like the closer to the album, One Last Thing. This cut sees Mac freestyle throughout, basically making his statement that he rapped his ass off and that he more than had the potential to be a great rapper. The track starts in a way that's very vibrant and loud, but also very heavenly, with a lot of twists and turns to keep things interesting. Mac really does spaz on the beat, slowing down just a tiny bit, but bringing a lot of bounce to his cadence that sounds awesome against the production. Really couldn't have picked a better cut to end on. Jeez, Pitchfork gave this thing a 1? Look, I know, we all have different opinions, and I speak all the time about letting people have their opinions and not being pretentious assholes about your opinion, so I really don't want to come across like that here. But I mean, I'm just confused because a 1 out of 10 usually indicates that something is an insufferable, exceptional kind of bad, and this? Nah, I don't see it. As a matter of fact, I do dig it in spite of some inconsistency here and there. As much as there might have been this thought that the album would just be a bunch of dated frat rap, I think Mac does show a good deal of versatility and artfulness with some of the tracks on here. While listening, I was surprised to see how predictive it would be. Several tracks here feel like they could pass as early ideas that Mac would go on to refine with his final albums, and even here it didn't sound like he was out of his depth in those sounds. He proved to be a charismatic vocalist with great flows and clever punchlines, and it often felt like Mac knew how to make his presence felt regardless of the track. Yes, it is a bit inconsistent and not every genre detour totally sticks the landing, but all in all, this is a very solid debut album. I wouldn't mistake it for Mac's best work, but I'd still call it a good record. Back in 2011, I feel like I would have possibly taken a track or two away from this, but maybe not the entire record. Listening to it now, I actually quite enjoyed myself with it. If I had to put it on my scale, I'd probably give it a good rating. It's not Mac's best, but for a debut album, it's a pretty solid time, and I'm glad to see that age has been kind enough to this project. But that's just my opinion on this album. What did you guys think about it? Did you listen to it back in 2011? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it back then? Hate it back then? Do you still still love it now? Do you still hate it now? Are you just completely indifferent towards it? Whatever your thoughts and opinions are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And as soon as I shut this video off, I'm going to be filming my next 10 Years Later video, which is going to be on Drake's Take Care. Having previously reviewed that album and listened to it several times over, that is going to be a long video. So stay tuned for that, but until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.